Yo everyone, Faded Lore here. Look, I've been staring at this picture for days, and I still can't believe it. This isn't one of those Faded Lore stories. This is something that just happened, March of this year, 2024. Okay, check this out. There's this worker in the Netherlands doing his daily river dredging job. The Korte Linschoten River. Boring ass name, right? But wait, he's scooping up mud and boom. Something flashes in the black muck. And this isn't some piece of junk metal. This is a fucking sword. Intact. Almost a meter long. It was sitting in the mud for nearly 1,000 years and it's still in one piece. But here's the crazy part. When they wiped the mud off, deeply carved symbols appeared on the blade. The endless knot. Sounds fancy, right? 5 interlocking squares in a circle. And a sun wheel. With a cross in the middle. Bro, this isn't like someone dropped their sword in the river and forgot to get it. These symbols, they mean something. They're sacred. And we're talking about a time when paganism and Christianity could absolutely not appear on the same object. Unless its owner was playing a much bigger game. I've dug deep into this. And what I found? Man, it changes everything we know about medieval European history. About secret rituals. About why hundreds of swords have been found in rivers all across the continent. This isn't a coincidence. This is a pattern. A ritual. And the Linschoten Sword? It just opened a door to a world that, honestly, I'm not sure we're ready for. But fuck it. We're not here to play it safe. We're here for the truth. So let's dive in. Because this story is going to take us from a small river in the Netherlands to the dark heart of Europe's oldest legends. From Excalibur to Viking curses. From dry archaeology to the bloody rituals our ancestors performed to communicate with something on the other side. Ready? Because once we start, there's no turning back. Alright, so we have an 11th century Viking sword that was just pulled out of the mud. But this is no ordinary Viking sword, and I'm about to show you why. First, its specs. 1 meter long, 840 grams. Sound heavy? Wrong. This is actually unusually light for a sword from that period. A standard Viking sword? At least 1 kilo or more. So why is it so light? Archaeologists analyzed it and found top-tier iron quality from the Value mines, the best iron producer in Northern Europe at the time. The smithing technique? Bro, this is master level. Someone spent their life creating this thing. This wasn't a weapon for a gate guard. This was the sword of the elite. But wait, the closer you look, the weirder it gets. Imagine you're holding it. The metal is ice cold even after being wiped dry. The hilt fits strangely perfectly, as if it were designed for one specific hand. And then you see them. The symbols carved into the blade. The endless knot on one side, the sun wheel on the other. Guys, this is the first mindfuck. The endless knot. This symbol appears in Buddhism, Hinduism, Celtic culture. It represents infinity, the interconnectedness of all things, of karma, if you will. The sun wheel? That's an ancient pagan symbol, but with a Christian cross in the middle. 2 opposing spiritual worlds on the same sword. I called a friend who specializes in medieval symbology. He was silent for about 10 seconds after seeing the picture, then said, "Dude, this shouldn't exist." But it does exist, and it's telling us something. In the 11th century, this was a period of intense religious transition in Northern Europe. Christianity was trying to wipe out pagan beliefs, but there were people who stood between 2 worlds, people who held the secrets of both. And one of them owned this sword. But here's the creepy part. The oxygen-deprived environment in the river mud preserved the sword almost perfectly, as if it was waiting for the right moment to appear. I checked the data again. The layer of mud where the sword was found, carbon dating shows it was placed there around 1050 to 1150 AD. The exact time Utrecht became a battlefield for supernatural forces. Oh shit, did I just say supernatural? I meant political. But honestly, with what's coming next, the line between the two is thinner than you think. Because Utrecht in the 11th century, it wasn't just a city. It was the ground zero of a war that wasn't just about land or power. Okay, buckle up people. We're about to time travel. Destination, Utrecht, 1050 AD. And if you think Game of Thrones is brutal, man, you haven't seen anything. Picture this. You're standing in the middle of medieval Utrecht. But this isn't the city you imagine. This is a fucking fortress of religious power. The Bishop of Utrecht? This dude doesn't just pray. He has an army. He has the power of execution. He's basically the Pope of the entire northern Netherlands. And everyone wants him dead. To the north, the Count of Holland is sharpening his knives. To the south, the Holy Roman Emperor is staring him down. To the west, the Count of Flanders with his army of mercenaries. And don't forget, the Vikings are still hanging around, though now they call themselves merchants. Yeah, right. But here's the crazy part. Utrecht wasn't just a physical battlefield, it was a spiritual battlefield. In 857, the Vikings had burned the city to the ground, slaughtering the monks. But they couldn't kill something else. The old beliefs. The rituals from Celtic and Germanic times were still being practiced in the shadows. I found a text from that era, a chronicle by a monk named Alpertus. He wrote, "The waters around Utrecht are cursed. The old gods still hunger there." The old gods. Plural, not the Christian God. And check this out. At the exact time the Linschoten Sword was deposited, Utrecht was undergoing what's called the Great Transition. Not just a religious transition, but a change in warfare. Cavalry was replacing infantry, heavy armor was replacing the shield wall, and the sword? It went from a collective weapon to a personal symbol. Personal. Sacred. Every sword now carried the soul of its owner. But this is when things get dark. Around the same time, all over Europe, people started finding massive numbers of swords in rivers, in lakes, in bogs. Not one or two. Hundreds. Thousands. Modern historians call them votive offerings. But offerings to whom? To what? One detail gives me the chills. All of these swords were placed in the water intentionally. Not thrown, not dropped. Placed. Like a ritual. And Utrecht? Ground zero for this phenomenon. Because Utrecht wasn't just a crossroads of religions. It was a place where worlds met. Where the veil was thinnest. Where, if you knew how, you could talk to the things on the other side. And someone, the owner of the Linschoten Sword, knew how. The question is, who were they trying to talk to? And more importantly, who answered? Alright, this is where shit gets real. And I need you to really open your minds for this part. Forget everything you think you know about archaeology, about history, about how the world works, because what I'm about to show you, it's gonna flip the whole script. Okay, so put yourself in the shoes of an 11th century warrior. You're about to die. Or worse, you're about to do something that, once you do it, there's no coming back. The sword in your hand, it's not just steel. In Germanic and Celtic culture, the sword is an extension of your soul. It drinks blood with you. It carries your honor. Some believe it even contains a part of your spirit. And now, you have to return it. But return it to where? This is the mindfuck. To the water. I've dug deep into this, guys, and what I found, Jesus Christ, this isn't an isolated incident. This is a fucking pandemic of ritual sacrifice across Europe. Lake Latene, Switzerland, 166 swords. All of them bent, intentionally, killed, so they couldn't be used again in this world. The River Thames, London, the Battersea Shield, the Waterloo Helmet, dozens of swords, all top-tier equipment. All deliberately placed in the water. Linschoten, Wales, a small lake, 150 plus weapons and metal objects, carbon dating, all thrown in within a few decades, a mass ritual. But here's the kicker, these places aren't random, they are all liminal spaces, where the physical world meets the spiritual world. Water, in every ancient culture, is a gateway, a portal, the membrane between worlds. I found an account by an Anglo-Saxon monk, Bede the Venerable. He described a ritual he witnessed. The warrior stood at the water's edge as the sun died. He spoke words in the old tongue, words that made my Christian soul tremble. Then he walked into the water, sword held high. When the water reached his chest, he plunged the blade down. The water accepted it, drew it down. And something rose in return. Something rose in return. Guys, do you understand the implications of this? This isn't a one-way transaction. This is an exchange, a trade, a deal. You give up your most precious thing, your soul weapon, and in return, the ancient texts suggest safe passage to the afterlife, protection for your family, victory in the next battle, or sometimes forgiveness for sins that can't be washed away. But the Linschoten Sword, with the endless knot in the sun wheel, This isn't a standard offering, this is a power play. Someone was negotiating with multiple forces: the Christian god, pagan deities, the eternal cycle itself. And they chose the Korte Linschoten River for a reason. I checked the history of the area. The Korte Linschoten isn't just a river, it's an ancient boundary, a border between tribal territories, between Christian and pagan lands, between the world of the living and something else. The perfect place for a deal that transcends all boundaries. But this is the question that keeps me up at night. If this was a deal, who was the other party? And did they accept the offer? Because remember, the water kept this sword for almost 1,000 years, preserved it perfectly, protected it. Until now, until it suddenly appeared. Timing is everything in magic. And make no mistake, this is magic. Ancient, real, and still active. The question is, why now? What's changed? What's coming? And suddenly a connection hit me like lightning, a pattern I can't ignore. Yo, okay, deep breath. Because what I'm about to drop on you will either blow your mind or make you think I've lost it. But fuck it, we're already this deep. Excalibur. Everyone knows the story, right? King Arthur pulls the sword from the stone, becomes king, does king shit, dies. End of story. Wrong. So fucking wrong. The real story. Arthur gets Excalibur from the water. From the Lady of the Lake. A mysterious arm rises up from the surface of the lake holding this badass sword. Arthur takes it and promises to return it when his time comes. Fast forward to Arthur dying. Sir Bedivere, Arthur's most loyal homie, is ordered to throw Excalibur back into the lake. The dude tries to fake it twice. He can't bring himself to throw away such a dope weapon. But finally, the third time, he yeets it into the water. And this is when shit gets weird. A hand rose from the water, caught the sword, waved it 3 times, then drew it beneath the surface. Guys, this isn't fantasy. This is memory. The cultural memory of a real ritual. And Excalibur isn't an isolated case. Check this pattern. Gram, the sword of Sigurd the Dragon Slayer. After killing the dragon Fafnir and scoring the Nibelung treasure, Sigurd is betrayed and killed. Gram? Vanished. Legend says it was returned to the waters of the Rhine. Durandal, the sword of Roland, Charlemagne's paladin, unbreakable, holy, contains relics of saints in its hilt. As Roland is dying at the Battle of Roncesvalles Pass, he tries to smash the sword so the enemy can't get it. He can't break it. So he throws it, and it disappears. Locals say it flew over the mountains and landed in a sacred pool. Tyrfing, a cursed sword from Norse mythology, forged by dwarves, cursed to kill a man every time it's drawn. After causing countless deaths, it's buried with its last owner, but the grave is found empty. The sword is gone. A nearby lake, suddenly it becomes cursed. See the pattern? Legendary swords, water, disappearance, return. But here's the real mindfuck. The Lady of the Lake. We always think of her as a person, a magical woman who lives underwater. But what if the lady isn't a person? What if it's the personification of the water itself? In Celtic mythology, every body of water has a spirit. River gods, lake goddesses. Well, guardians, they are ancient. They are powerful. And they make deals. I found a text from a monk at Glastonbury Abbey, where Arthur was supposedly buried. He wrote in 1191, "The waters remember what men forget. They hold the promises of kings and the oaths of warriors. What is given to them in faith, they return in need. But woe to those who take without giving, or who break the ancient compacts." Ancient compacts, deals, contracts. And suddenly, the endless knot on the Linschoten sword makes sense. The endless knot. It's not just a pretty design. In Buddhism, it represents samsara, the endless cycle of death and rebirth. In Celtic tradition, it's an eternal binding, a contract that cannot be broken. Combine that with the sun wheel, a symbol of cosmic order, of divine authority. Holy shit, this sword isn't just an offering, it's a contract, a binding agreement between the wielder and something in the water. But a contract for what? I dug deeper into the Utrecht records. In 1147, there's a mention of a knight of 2 faiths, This dude could supposedly walk between the Christian and pagan worlds, protected by both, feared by both. And he disappeared. No battle, no death record, just gone. The same time frame as the carbon dating of the sword's placement. Coincidence? In this line of work, I've learned one thing. There are no coincidences, only patterns we don't fully understand yet. In this pattern, it's screaming a message. Swords in the water aren't about death. They're about transformation, about crossing over, about becoming something else. Arthur didn't die. He went to Avalon, the Isle of Apples, another liminal space surrounded by water, waiting to return when Britain needs him most. Sigurd's spirit didn't die with his body. It went with Graham into the Rhine, joining the flow of the eternal waters. Roland's soul rode Durandal over the mountains to a sacred pool, where heroes wait beyond the veil. And the Knight of Two Faiths? With the endless knot sword? Maybe he didn't disappear. Maybe he just crossed over, took the ultimate leap of faith, gave himself fully to the contract. And maybe, just maybe, that contract is still active. Because remember, this sword just appeared, after almost 1,000 years, perfectly preserved, waiting. The question that keeps me up at night, waiting for what? For who? And why do I have this feeling, this gut-deep certainty that the clock is ticking? Alright, real talk. After digging deep into this, I realize we're missing the big picture. Forget about mystical numbers. Let's talk about something truly creepy, the pattern of human behavior. The Linschoten Sword with the endless knot and sunwheel? Guess what I found? The exact same symbol combination appears on at least 7 other swords found in water across Europe, all from the same time period, all within 200 kilometers of Utrecht. This isn't a coincidence, this is a movement. A secret society? A warrior cult? We don't know. But clearly there was a group of people who shared the same beliefs, the same practices. And what was that practice? Decommissioning weapons according to a specific ritual. Think about it. You're a medieval warrior. Your sword is the most valuable thing you own. It could be worth years of income. It's your survival tool, your status symbol, your family heirloom. And you deliberately throw it in a river? That's not normal behavior. That's driven behavior. But driven by what? I found a document from a monastery in Cologne, dated 1156. A monk describes something he witnessed. 7 knights came to the river at dawn. Each bore a blade marked with the eternal knot. They spoke no words, but each in turn walked into the water until it reached their hearts, then thrust their swords down into the riverbed. When the last emerged, they departed in 7 directions, never to meet again. 7 knights, 7 swords, 7 directions. These aren't random warriors having a bad day. This is a coordinated action, planned, purposeful. But for what purpose? Modern historians call it ritual deposition. Fancy words for, we don't fucking know why they did it. But I have a theory, and it's based on something very human. Guilt. 1147, the peak of the Crusades. Knights from all over Europe are massacring people in the Middle East in the name of God, but not everyone was comfortable with that. Some warriors came back, traumatized, questioning everything. What if the endless knot knights were these men? Warriors caught between duty and conscience? Between their Christian vows and human morality? Throwing a sword in the water, the ultimate act of renunciation. I'm done. No more killing. Let the waters wash away the blood. But here's the kicker. The waters around Utrecht, they aren't just rivers. They're part of a massive delta system connecting to the North Sea. Tidal waters. They ebb and flow. Anything thrown in there doesn't truly disappear. It's trapped in the eternal cycle of the currents, going out with the tide, coming back with the flood, never resting, never free. Just like guilt, just like trauma, just like the memories of violence you can't forget. Maybe that was the point. Not to destroy the weapons, but to contain them, to trap the violence in an endless loop where it couldn't hurt anyone anymore. And in 2024, when the sword finally surfaced, maybe it's not about cosmic cycles or mystical timing. Maybe it's simply about environmental change, water levels dropping, currents shifting, sediment patterns changing due to climate change and human intervention. The sword didn't return for a magical reason. It was exposed because of the physical reality of a changing world. But the message is still powerful. What we bury doesn't stay buried. What we try to forget eventually surfaces. The past isn't truly past, it's just waiting beneath the surface. And if one sword surfaced, how many more are still down there? How many warriors' final acts of conscience are still hidden in the mud? More importantly, what else did they throw away? Because swords aren't the only things found in ritual deposits. Jewelry, coins, armor, sometimes human remains. Sacrifices, executions, or companions who chose to follow their weapons into whatever waited beneath. The Utrecht records go strangely silent in the years after 1147, as if something happened that nobody wanted to write down. Church documents skip from 1146 straight to 1151 with no explanation. 4 years of silence, 4 years of secrets. And in the middle of that gap, 7 knights walked into the water and changed something. Maybe just themselves, maybe something larger. We'll never know the full truth. But the sword has given us a glimpse, a window into a moment when belief systems collided, when warriors chose conscience over glory, when water became a confessor for sins too heavy to carry. The endless knot wasn't about eternity, it was about being trapped. The sun wheel wasn't about divine authority, it was about seeking forgiveness from powers both old and new. The Linschoten Sword isn't a magical artifact, it's a psychological artifact, a physical manifestation of the human need to let go, to atone, to find peace. And the fact that it was preserved perfectly for almost 1,000 years, that's the real magic. The waters did remember. They held these warriors' final statements, their rejections of violence, their desperate hope for redemption. Kept them safe, kept them whole, until the world was ready to remember that even in the darkest times, some people choose to put down their swords. Maybe that's the message we need to hear in 2024, when violence seems inevitable, when conflict feels inescapable. Sometimes the greatest warrior is the one who knows when to stop fighting. Sometimes the strongest statement is what you choose to let go. Alright guys, so where does this leave us? The Linschoten Sword is now sitting quietly in the Leiden Museum. Behind glass, under lights, labeled and cataloged. Just another artifact in the collection. But is it really just that? Look, I'm not going to pretend I have all the answers. The truth is, nobody does. Not archaeologists, not historians, certainly not some random YouTuber like me. But here's what I do know. Almost 1,000 years ago, someone stood on the bank of the Korte Linschoten River. They held a sword, probably the most valuable thing they owned. And they made a choice. Threw it in the water. Walked away. Why? We can guess. A religious ritual. A personal sacrifice. A political statement. A mental breakdown. Who knows? But the fact is they did it. And they weren't alone. Hundreds of people across Europe did the same thing. Different times. Different places. Same action. That's not random. That's human. And maybe that's the real story here. Not about mystical symbols or ancient mysteries, but about people. Real people with real problems, making real choices. Just like us. The sword might be 900 years old, but the impulse to let go of something heavy, to seek cleansing, to hope for a fresh start, that's timeless. The water is still flowing in the Korte Linschoten River. Same river, different water, an endless cycle. And somewhere out there, under other rivers, other lakes, there are more swords, more stories, more pieces of a puzzle we will never fully complete. But that's okay. Some mysteries are meant to stay mysterious. This is Faded Lore, where we dig up the past and try to make sense of it. Sometimes we succeed, sometimes we just end up with more questions. If you enjoyed this deep dive, hit subscribe, drop a comment. I really want to know what you think about this whole thing. And hey, next time you're near a body of water, take a moment. Think about all the history flowing beneath, all the stories sunken in the mud. It makes you wonder what else is down there, waiting. Until next time, peace out. Yo everyone, Faded Lore here. Look, I've been staring at this picture for days and I still can't believe it. This isn't one of those faded lore stories. This is something that just happened, March of this year, 2024. Okay, check this out. There's this worker in the Netherlands, doing his daily river dredging job. The Korte Linschoten River. Boring ass name, right? But wait. He's scooping up mud, and boom. Something flashes in the black muck.